Hello and welcome to the stakeholder launch for the Sustainable Innovation Forum 2021, which will take place in week 2 of COP26 in Glasgow. Thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to welcome so many of you from around the world to this pre-COP briefing. I'm Nick Gowing, your chair for the event. The need for this briefing, the need for the meeting could not be greater. As the world works to recover from COVID-19, the pandemic, the clock continues to tick on climate action. There is even urgency, there's greater urgency now to produce irreversible action on the climate emergency. In August, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, reported that temperatures are rising more quickly than expected. The COP26 pre-briefing in Milan was briefed really worryingly that countries are still not doing enough to tackle the climate change crisis. What key steps need to be taken by COP26 to ensure we're entering the decisive decade in a way that protects our people, our planet, and our prosperity? This launch event is calling really on all sectors to engage with the COP. To deliver on the Paris Agreement, we need the full engagement of businesses, large and small, the finance community, civil society, as well as governments. Events such as the Sustainable Innovation Forum in Glasgow enable the crucial cross-sector collaboration that is needed. That's why you're joining us here today. Well, as you just saw, the Sustainable Innovation Forum runs from the 8th to the 10th of November. The 3-day agenda will showcase private sector action and cross-sector collaboration across those 4 critical themes that you've just seen on that video. This year's Sustainable Innovation Forum will be a hybrid event. We will welcome speakers and around 1,000 in-person high-level guests to the Climate Action Innovation Zone in Glasgow. We'll be broadcasting live and on demand to a targeted global audience of up to 50,000 viewers right around the world. The Climate Action Innovation Zone is located just 200 meters across the River Clyde from the COP blue and green zones. The Innovation Zone is a net zero venue space. It's powered by sustainable energy solutions, including hydrogen and solar energy. It is an ambitious partnership between climate action and the Scottish Government. So we need to give special thanks to our headline partner, the BMW Group, and to all our many partners so far for their support and their endorsement. Please do engage with us on social media throughout this stakeholder event. Then also over the weeks to COP26 to ensure you do receive the latest updates on the Sustainable Innovation Forum. You can follow us on Twitter, which is @climate_action_, or you can use the hashtags SIF21, or Climate Action Live, all one word. And of course, visit our media hub at www.cop26.uk. First, though, a message from the conveners of the COP, the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the stakeholder launch event of the Sustainable Innovation Forum 2021. And I'd like to thank the Climate Action Team and the Scottish Enterprise for reaching out to us and allowing us this opportunity from the UN Climate Change Secretariat to share some of our views. We are just 25 days away from the start of COP26 in Glasgow. This is a pivotal moment, an opportunity to walk the talk and build back better. COP26 is the turning point in addressing climate change and to shape humanity's future on this planet. We know there is no planet B. In the 6 years since the adoption of Paris Agreement, it was an adoption, but it was not a full operationalization. We have witnessed many climate catastrophes worldwide, an alarming warning from IPCC and the scientific community. Unless we implement sustained and large-scale emission reductions now, the global warming could potentially reach to 2.7 degrees Celsius as confirmed by IPCC, or even higher than that, which would result in even more catastrophic events and which we do not want. For years, experts have theorized about what a truly modern global crisis would look like. Now that we are living through one, nobody wants to see another. World leaders have a window of opportunity at COP26 to make significant progress. We are at a stage of climate emergency where there is need to drive systems transformation, looking at systems holistically rather than dealing with on a piecemeal basis. This is particularly true looking at the recent climate commitments at the UN General Assembly in New York that happened a couple of weeks ago, and just last week at pre-COP in Milan. And in that regard, what we are looking for at COP26 is as follows. First, it means that past promises that have been made must be kept. That's what success means at COP26. That is the first priority, and which it translates into $100 billion that was promised by developed countries to be provided to developing countries for them to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And this needs to happen through the nationally determined contributions. Second, it means that wrapping up negotiations to fully implement Paris Agreement, the remaining article that still remains outstanding or has not been concluded is Article 6 of Paris Agreement. And also the enhanced transparency framework, agreeing to how the governments and parties will achieve the full implementation of Paris Agreement, including to achieve a goal of adaptation. Third, the success at COP also means raising ambition to reduce emissions, adapt to climate impacts, and to provide finance to close the existing gaps between global expectations and political commitments. We need clear plans to reduce emissions and to get the world on a path to achieving climate neutrality by 2050. Fourth, success at COP means ensuring that no one is left behind. That means we need to incorporate and ensure every voice is heard and taken into consideration. We need businesses, we need civil society, we need nations to work together for our common goal. Public-private sector partnership is essential to achieving the goals of Paris Agreement. The private sector climate leadership is key to advancing the goals. While an incredible amount of work remains to be done, we have also seen signs of optimism and transformation in the private sector. This is perhaps best reflected in the Race to Zero campaign, which works to mobilize governments, businesses, civil societies to achieve carbon neutrality as quickly as possible. In just 1 year since the launch of Race to Zero, more than 4,500 companies, cities, regions, financial, educational, and healthcare institutions have joined that race. This is where Sustainable Innovation Forum and Climate Action's ongoing engagement, bringing together the public and private sectors, is extremely important. I'd like to invite and encourage the Stakeholder launch event audience to attend the Sustainable Innovation Forum in person in Glasgow or digitally through the hybrid event platform that is being provided. The forum is designed to facilitate the cross-sector, public-private sector collaboration essential for transition to net zero. Showcasing business action, the power of partnership, the importance of effective policy, and the innovation solutions at our disposal today. As I said, we are 25 days away from COP26. While it's encouraging to see the incredible momentum of the last 6 months, the challenges ahead are significant. That being said, I have never been more confident that we can surpass these obstacles. The science is clear, and we have the framework of the Paris Agreement to guide us. It's the best compass that we can use. What we need is political willingness to overcome the differences and reach consensus necessary. For those political leaders, the message cannot be clearer. It's time to make tough decisions like never before. Everyone, all segments of the society, in fact, must ensure they get there. We have made progress this far because influential voices around the world have pushed their political leaders to do what is necessary. That's how we got to the Paris Agreement in the first place. I therefore encourage all of you to do the same now, to do it with more intensity than ever before. We have never needed it more than now, and we have never had an opportunity like this to change so much in so little time that is left to us, and together build a future that is green, clean, healthy, sustainable, resilient, and more prosperous for all. Let's get the job done at COP26. We are all in this together, and I very much look forward to seeing many of you at COP in person out of these screens very soon. I wish you all the best, and again, thank you for this opportunity.
The UNFCCC there. Well, let's deep dive now into issues for the Sustainable Innovation Forum with our headline partner, the BMW Group. Thomas Becker is Vice President for Sustainability and Mobility. What is the BMW Group expecting from the COP?
Ladies and gentlemen, at the BMW Group, we continue to pick up the pace in our efforts to combat climate change. In concrete terms, we're once again tightening our own targets for reducing CO2 emissions that we set just last summer. We're fully committed to a course that is in line with the 1.5-degree target for limiting global warming. And this means that we are now also part of the international Race to Zero initiative. Additionally, we are massively advancing the use of secondary materials and the principles of a circular economy. We are committed to improving the framework conditions for building a market for secondary materials. We take responsibility. More on that to come in Glasgow.
Thomas, what is BMW Group expecting from COP26?
Well, we have a clear commitment to make BMW sustainable, and sustainability is out and foremost meeting the objectives of the Paris Climate Agreement. And therefore, the Glasgow conference for us is another very important step where we want to be part of the conversation between those many players who have a stake in it, politicians, academia, experts, but also players from other industries, where we are seeking a very close dialogue with.
What do you think is achievable?
Well, we hope that we will see a constructive, a good discussion, namely between the big trading blocs. As a global industry, as a company that is deeply rooted in Europe, in the US, in the UK, in China, what we would really appreciate is more alignment on strategies applied, not only at target level, but also when it comes, for example, on how to bringing down CO2 emissions along globally interconnected supply chains, which define our carbon footprint beyond the drivetrain technologies.
What kind of role do you believe that an enormous organization like the BMW Group can have in this enormous gathering in Glasgow?
What we do is we utilize the platform of the Sustainability Innovation Forum to talk about what exactly is needed now, and that is sustainable innovation. So, for example, if we want to close material loops, which is at the core of our climate strategy, you need to link policies that are applied in the energy sector, in the, for example, aluminum or steel industry, with the objectives that we are pursuing. And having this kind of an integrated perspective is certainly something where we believe that the Sustainable Innovation Forum can really make a huge contribution in providing us with input for our future strategic steps.
You're facing significant demand and expectations from the customers. How are you having to adapt in this new, very vibrant, very demanding market?
What we have been seeing was really a very strong uptake of our electric vehicles over the last years and this year. So, for example, we as BMW employees don't get any of the electric minis which we make in Oxford at the moment, because rightly so, they all go to the customers first. So, that having said, we still have a huge level of uncertainty with regard to quite a few other markets. So we have lead markets like the UK, like Germany, like France, like the Netherlands, like California. But on the other hand, things are way less predictable in other parts of the world. So keeping the kind of flexibility in the production network, in the supply chain, is crucial. And namely, the semiconductor development has shown how strongly we depend on the interconnection in our supply chain in order to be successful. So managing that certainly is decisive.
We've spoken on several occasions, and I've spoken to some of your colleagues at previous COPs. I think there was an expectation that this was going to move fast. But really, even when we spoke a year ago, not the expectation of the speed at which we've seen for EVs, particularly in the last few months.
Corona certainly was an accelerator. Many of the programs that we have been seeing in, namely our European markets, have added demand beyond what we would have projected 1.5 or 2 years ago. And therefore, we were even able to overachieve the European legal requirements very clearly in last year.
Let's talk about the principles of BMW's involvement in the COP process. What have you found you can achieve at the COP? Why do you need to be involved with this high profile at this COP this year in Glasgow?
Because very clearly, if we want to achieve a success and reach the Paris objectives, you need a closer alignment between the corporate and the political sector. And namely, if you do not have a situation anymore like we were used to for 20 years, that CO2 is regulated at the tailpipe. With the uptake of electric vehicles, the focus of bringing down the footprint of our products moves from the tailpipe into the value chain, into the supply chain. So we need this integrated perspective of policies in order to be able to be successful. And this is, I think, a huge paradigm shift where we also wanted to demonstrate with our vision vehicle, the Vision Circular, that closed loop production is a big piece of the future, also of successfully reducing the impact on climate, but also to reduce primary material consumption.
Let's talk about the iVision Circular, because there's an important point of principle. This is really groundbreaking for so much that you have been working for.
Yeah.
What are the principles that you are underscoring here about the circular economy, about supply chains and so on?
Right.
What is embedded, not just in the design and what it looks like, but actually what's in the car?
If you take aluminum, you save 75% of the CO2 if you use secondary instead of primary materials. You have very high savings rate for steel and plastics as well. And also for the future of the battery cells, recycling is decisive. So this is why, from a management principle point of view, we have turned around the burden of proof, if you like. In the past, when you were designing a car and you defined the criteria for your for your purchasing colleagues, you were always on the safe side if you said, take primary materials. If somebody wants secondary, he's the one who has to justify why to do that. We now turned that around, and now the owners, the need to prove why it is needed is on those who insist on primary material. And by that, we have set ourselves a next interim target to get up in our secondary material rate across the company from where we are today, which is somewhat below 30% to 50%. And in order to get there, it's all about collaboration. It's about looking into the chemical industry, what they can do in order to have higher quality secondary plastics. It is all about talking to the steel people, how we can make use of more scrap and how we can also have high quality automotive grade material made of scrap steel. Or, for example, have 100% recycled aluminum wheels, which is something that is not there on the market yet. So a lot of things we need to be doing with other players in the chain where we engage and where we need political support.
Now, when we've talked before and we've talked about this as an aspiration, you've talked very strongly about the education, the learning, the changing of mindsets that BMW Group was going to have to go through with everyone in the supply chain, plus the customers and so on. How much of an uphill job has that been? Because what you've experienced will be what many corporates are having to experience as well.
Indeed. I mean, with just communicating objectives, the job is not done. At the end of the day, it's all about the proper integration of sustainability criteria into everyday management. For example, in our purchasing division, we have been setting up dedicated units who have all the knowledge and expertise about CO2 footprint, about recycling, also about critical raw materials, about ensuring, for example, adherence to human rights. And these people, they again are the coaches, are the support functions for those people who do, for example, purchasing of steel or purchasing of rubber. So it's all about really rooting sustainability expertise in the daily management. And this is where we are on a steep curve, I hope.
Because you've got a basic principle of reduce, reuse, and recycle. You want a life cycle for the car. You want everything to be reusable afterwards.
Exactly.
How much still work needs to be done on this, accepting this principle? Because this is going to be at the heart of so much to do with sustainability at COP26.
Yeah, and I mean, today, what we have done as an industry and us ourselves was to focus on the recyclability, meaning you make it in a way that it can be recycled. The objective has not been that steel would become a car again. A big part of old scrapped vehicles end up in the construction industry. Aluminum ends up as a beverage can. But in the future, we need to make sure that from the material that we build cars of, a higher content is recycled. And this is a different logic. And here we need to make huge steps forward.
How much is transparency and openness now a central part of everything you're working towards? Because the customer, the supplier, everyone, including the people in finance, need to have information. They need to know it's good information as well.
It's absolutely decisive. And with our integrated corporate report, which was issued this year for the first time, we have the same scrutiny, the same level of controls we use for our business figures, also for our sustainability indicators. And you rightly say that. It's all about credibility. At the end of the day, it's not so much about what you say, what should happen in the year 2040, meaning what the successors of our successors should be doing. It is about being able to demonstrate how much we improved from 2021 to 2022. And that means that all the numbers have to be right. That, for example, we can demonstrate that a supplier has indeed used renewable energies in order to supply us. So they have to put forward a document showing that. But beyond this simple case, we need to build up entire chains of information. For example, for complex components, to be able to calculate the CO2 footprint, although it may be the result of 3 or 4 steps of a value chain and 30, 40 different suppliers coming together, so that you still can rightly say this piece of 20 different metals maybe has a footprint of 0.5 kilogram of CO2. We are by far not there yet, but we need to work on this. And this is why we initiated together with another group of companies what is called Catena-X, a collaboration which is all about the digital monitoring of CO2 data along value chains.
Let's finally, Thomas, bring all this together in the Sustainable Innovation Forum and the kind of gathering that represents, and also the sharing of information, because you joined Race to Zero back in August. What is the importance of now signing up to something like that, to make a declaration of principles that you are now part of the Race to Zero towards net zero?
Right. So what we very thoroughly examined was, will we just get into the corridor of Paris with 1.75 to 1.5? And only once we were really sure that for the time horizon until 2030, we will be on that track, did we adapt our objectives and increased the targets we have been setting for our fleet and for our overall climate objectives. And clearly, we are determined to deliver on that and to demonstrate the implementation of this on a yearly basis in a very transparent manner. So for us, this is on the one hand a clear signal to the outside world, to all our stakeholders, to say, measure us by that commitment. And on the other hand, it is a very clear signal from the board of management into the entire BMW organization that this is an objective that everybody who has a say in this company has to contribute to and is responsible for.
Can we even use the word ethical here, that there's a new approach to building mobility, that it's not just about 4 wheels and getting somewhere, it's about how you do it?
Indeed, I mean, we want to make sure that people know that they get a very good product, and very good in the broadest sense, and with the minimal impact on climate, with the assurance that our value chains are very properly taken care of, and that whatever they purchase is something that at least offers the chance to be recycled and to flow back into the circle. So at the end of the day, we want to be able to assure a premium customer whom we charge a premium price that luxury does not mean waste, and that responsibility is something that they can expect us to take and not just claim it, but prove it.
Finally, come the middle of November, when we assume COP will have come to an end, unless the clock stops and people keep talking, what will be your measure of success? What would you like to be able to say on behalf of the BMW Group, that this was so important, look at what we've achieved?
Well, what I would strongly hope is that we get feedback from our stakeholders saying, okay, what you are doing and how you are approaching is a contribution. You are on the right path forward. And on the other hand, finding out where we may not be yet, where we need to be. So this is all about permanently comparing the speed of change outside the organization with the needs of development inside the organization, and bringing that together, although it may mean friction, is actually the job of strategy. And that is why the COP is such an important place for us to do exactly that, compare what is happening outside with what is happening inside, and getting as much from the outside into the organization as possible.
Thomas Becker, Vice President, Sustainability and Mobility Strategy for the BMW Group. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So this really is a critical moment for climate action. At the pre-COP meeting in Milan, we heard Greta Thunberg tell politicians we don't have the technical solutions at this very moment to reach global climate targets. So the change needs to come from us, from the people, from the politicians, to become part of the climate solution. Up next, we have a climate action dialogue. We explore the importance of the private sector and the role that business needs to play. Joining us for this dialogue, our institutional partner, Business for Social Responsibility, BSR. Aaron Kramer is President and Chief Executive. What must happen at the COP? Aaron Kramer, President and CEO of BSR. Tell us why you want to be involved with the Sustainable Innovation Forum, Aaron.
Thank you, Nick. Good to be with you. Well, COP26 is, of course, an absolutely crucial event. There's a lot of action right now on climate, but we're not yet bending the curve to put us on a trajectory to an economy that can sustain itself. And the Sustainable Innovation Forum has for several years been a key event. I've been privileged to participate in past years and look forward to that again in 2021. And it brings together organizations and individual leaders who are making the changes that are needed, whether they're business model changes, whether they are products and services changes, or mindset changes that we need in addition to public policy and market frameworks in order to get on the right path to stay within 1.5 degrees of warming. We're not there yet, but the Sustainable Innovation Forum should be a showcase for the kinds of ideas that will help us get there.
How much does this converge, Aaron, with your core mission at BSR?
Well, our mission is to work with business to create a just and sustainable world. And let me talk about both pieces of that, because when it comes to climate action, we need to make sure that the new economy, the clean energy economy, is an economy that has a place for everyone. And so the just economy part of climate action is crucially important. We work with companies to help them act, create innovation, new efforts, to shift their businesses to more resilient models that take climate change seriously, to enable change by working within ecosystems, whether it's value chains in whatever communities they're a part of, and then influence, because business has to raise its voice with governments to make clear that the private sector wants action. That's why more than 600 companies have signed a letter to the leaders of the G20 under the auspices of the We Mean Business Coalition, which BSR is a proud founding partner in, so that business can help encourage governments to take the decisive action that's needed.
You mentioned the curve and it's beginning to bend. How much more work needs to be done, hopefully via COP26?
Quite a lot. So there are now over 3,000 companies that have created net zero targets, in most cases by the end, before the end or the middle of the century. There are nearly 2,000 companies that have either have approved or have submitted science-based targets. So we see a lot of commitments, but it's a little bit like business has been admitted to university, but doesn't yet have its degree. So business is making clear that it wants to see change happen. It's making clear that it is on the pathway towards that. However, warming is continuing. This is why the IPCC has issued a code red alert. And so business is on the path, but we are still in early days, unfortunately, and we need to see progress not only by 2050, we need to see progress by 2023 when there's going to be a global stocktake, 2025, 2030, if we have any hope of getting where we want to be by 2050.
How would you describe it, Aaron? Is it reluctance? Is it even denial of what is happening?
So I think delay has replaced denial as the enemy of climate action. You see less and less denial. I live in the United States where unfortunately, we've been ground zero for climate denial in many ways. That's fading away for the most part. I think most companies know that they need to act. We've had more conversations in boardrooms over the past 12 months about climate recognition that the needs are urgent, but it is no small thing to shift existing infrastructure, to shift existing public policies, to shift existing business models. These are things that do take time. The question is, are we moving fast enough? So there is motion. It's fundamentally different than where we were, for example, in advance of Paris. But again, intention is not the same as action. Action is not the same as impact. And that's ultimately what we need.
You say that's what is needed. Is there a recognition of the urgency when you listen to John Kerry, when you hear this is like wartime now, when he says that 45% of the work still has to be done? Is there a realization this can't really wait until 2050? It's got to be done by 2025, 2030. In other words, there's got to be an absolute imperative among your members.
There's an intellectual recognition of that, translating that into the frankly profound change that's needed is not going as fast as we need. And you say a wartime footing, we're fighting some other wars as well. We're fighting around COVID, we're fighting around inequality in our societies, whether it's based on race or gender or simply income. And we are facing new technologies that create both great opportunity, but also a lot of very profound questions, and then fundamental changes in business models. So businesses have a lot on their plate. I think they know that climate needs to be a priority, but it is one priority among several, and that's why that's one of the reasons why I think we may not be moving as fast as we like. But if you look at the shipping industry, if you look at the cement industry, if you look at rail travel, some of the harder to abate segments of our society, we're seeing far more action than we did 24 months ago. And that's a sign for hope. But hope without follow through is just a dream, as I think we all know. And so it's early days and it's late. It's early days in terms of the action. It's late in terms of the time available we have to shift our economy.
So let's look forward to COP26. What realistically do you think can be achieved? Because central to your mission at BSR is what you call our theory of change. Is that applicable at the speed and with intensity that is needed for the sustainability issues that COP26 is confronting?
Well, it has to be. So I think we need the world's largest emitters to follow through on commitments, strong NDCs. We're seeing some of that. They don't necessarily go as far as we would like. We need to see more of that. We need a commitment to climate finance because that provides a pathway towards mitigation and resilience and to a just transition for people around the world. We need to take seriously the question of a price on carbon that is a meaningful price on carbon, and we need commitments to accountability and transparency in terms of progress so that the so-called ratchet process can continue to move us to a higher level of ambition. The questions have not changed. What needs to change is the answers. I'm cautiously optimistic about what will happen at COP because we have no alternative. And so we need to make sure that business shows up, that policymakers take decisive action, and then get back to the work, because what happens the day after COP26 is arguably as important, if not more important, than what happens at COP26. It's time to turn ambition into action.
Aaron, one final thought, literally in 30 seconds. What will really disappoint you? In other words, what do you fear will not be achieved in Glasgow?
Lack of climate finance, and a lack of ambition from the world's largest emitters, and a lack of recognition that poorer countries around the world are going to need support for this transition. Those are the three areas where things can go sideways, and it's up to all of us to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Aaron Kramer, President and CEO of Business for Social Responsibility. Thanks very much. Looking forward to seeing you in Glasgow.
Same, Nick. Thanks very much.
Well, let's hear from more of our partners and their commitments on climate. A call for action from individuals, from organizations and businesses to get involved in committing to and inspiring others to act on climate change.
Worldwide CO2 emissions are still on the rise. The latest climate reports show that the 1.5 degree scenario is probably not achievable anymore. Urgent action is required now to achieve at least a 2 degree scenario, the limit where we can just avoid a massive and non-reversible change of the climate of our planet. This decade is decisive. It must be the turning point. We have a powerful toolkit at our hands to make it happen. Efficiency, electrification, green hydrogen. The combination of massive extension of renewable energies with green hydrogen projects is the solution for decarbonization of hard-to-abate sectors in industry, mobility, and energy. It is not too late, but we need to start the projects now, large scale and at all suitable locations. At Smart Energy, we are committed to develop and invest into these projects. It is an investment into our future. Join the momentum to lead the way.
Reaching net zero requires a complete transformation of today's operations. It starts by setting a strong climate vision and business strategy. Oliver Wyman has invested heavily in developing our capabilities to support our clients across the globe and across sectors of the economy to pursue commercially smart transition plans, enabling leadership teams to deploy financing, operating capabilities, and to engage with their customer relationships to achieve outcomes for which they were not originally designed. Oliver Wyman's commitment to the climate transition is also reflected in the investments we've made in supporting and collaborating with organizations driving forward change across the landscape, including the TCFD, CDP, the Voluntary Carbon Market Forum, the World Economic Forum, S&P Global, and most recently, the Climate Group. We also offer Oliver Wyman's Climate Academy, a learning and training program designed to give staff the tools they need to support the climate transition. All of this, though, has to rest on our own actions in our own operations. Oliver Wyman's been certified as carbon neutral, and we've set in motion a long-term strategy to integrate sustainability into all our operations and the way we work, reducing our own emissions on the way to net zero. Recent extreme weather events have been a stark reminder of the impact of climate change on our everyday lives and what the future may hold if we don't take climate action seriously. The Sustainable Innovation Forum at COP26 is a pivotal moment to collectively step up our efforts and refocus on ensuring that we can limit warming to 1.5 degrees and deliver a prosperous net zero future.
Tackling the global climate crisis will take all of us, and business has an important role to play. As we gear up for COP26, we must all come to the table ready to set ambitious goals and discuss tangible solutions to address climate change today and in the future. At MasterCard, we believe in the power of collaboration. We continue to set a high bar for ourselves while also activating our global network of partners, customers, and consumers, joining us in collective climate action through innovative partnerships and programs like our Priceless Planet Coalition.
Mott MacDonald is a carbon neutral company, and we have pledged to be a net zero organisation by 2040 or earlier. We are committed to working in collaboration with our clients to support the critical role that infrastructure has to play in the transition to a climate resilient net zero future. We look forward to bringing our global expertise to the Sustainable Innovation Forum at COP26 in pursuit of real progress towards urgent action.
At Autodesk, we have a vision for a better world designed and made for all. At this pivotal time in human history, which will require significant global action, we embrace the critical goals of the Conference of Parties: securing net zero by mid-century, protecting communities and habitats, mobilizing finance to these ends, and working together. To accelerate positive impact at scale, Autodesk empowers innovators in 3 primary areas derived from the UN SDGs. These are energy and materials, health and resilience, and work and prosperity. Last year, Autodesk achieved net zero greenhouse gas emissions across our business and value chain. This is part of a more than a decade-long effort to make sustainability an essential component of our business strategy and to translate that value to our customers. The bigger opportunity is to help our customers achieve their sustainable goals: net zero buildings, zero waste construction, energy efficient products, and circularity embedded into the design and make process. COP and the Sustainable Innovation Forum afford the opportunity to showcase how technology can transform industries. Together, we can build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable world designed and made for all. This is just a brief overview of how we partner with customers, work to advance industries, and lead by example. If you'd like to learn more about the Autodesk Sustainability Vision, I encourage you to read our annual impact report, and we will see you all in Glasgow.
As a signatory of the Business Ambition for 1.5 degrees and with approved science-based carbon reduction targets to net zero, here at Jacobs we're on a mission to drive action towards tackling the climate and biodiversity crises. We work with our partners and clients to educate, empower and create solutions that put our society and our economy on a pathway for a sustainable future.
Climate action is reinforcing the belief that nature is the most important partner to work with now in tackling the climate emergency. In support of this, Climate Action is partnering with social entrepreneur and author Jeremy Leggett, a pioneer of solar panels 20 years ago, founder of Solar Century and Solar Aid. He's creating a carbon negative, biodiversity positive COP26 Forest of Hope. That's on the Beldorney estate in the Scottish Highlands, west of Aberdeen. The company is called Highlands Rewilding Limited. So what is Jeremy's project? Jeremy Leggett, nice to see you. And you're talking to us way from the north of Scotland, where you're running a big rewilding project, massive ambitions as well. What are you doing?
I'm trying to score some points for taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and doing it in a way that allows nature to recover. So in other words, addressing the climate meltdown and the biodiversity collapse at the same time. And I think, you know, this is my final campaign as a long-term climate campaigner. I've been a solar entrepreneur for many years and enjoyed a bit of success there watching that solar solutions revolution happen. But no matter how good we are with solar and wind and electric vehicles and all the things we need to get to a zero carbon society, we know we're going to have to take carbon dioxide down out of the atmosphere if we're going to win in the struggle against climate meltdown. So that's what I want to try and do. That's what I set up this company for, with the money that I made when the solar company was sold, plus some debt added onto that from my network.
Describe what you're doing, though. You're taking over significant tracts of the Highlands of Scotland.
Not that significant. There are two small-ish estates. The total is 2,000 acres, but that's enough to make a contribution, especially if you can scale it. So I want to try and do two things in particular. First, contribute to the science of natural capital, the verifiability of taking carbon down out of the atmosphere and gaining biodiversity, because this is going to be very important if we ever want to make all this investable at scale. It's a question of verification. I'm a scientist by background. I know a bit about all that stuff. I think there's a contribution to be made there. But also you have to scale the process. So I'll be looking to acquire other estates. Can't afford to do it with my own money. Neither do I think that's a good idea. You can't have ultra rich people owning vast tracts of Scotland. I want to do that with a mass ownership company, new company called, with breathtaking originality, Highlands Rewilding. And that'll be owned by lots of different types of shareholders, including family offices and high net worth folk of the kind who've supported me up to now, but also crucially, local communities, Scots in general, Highlanders in particular, I hope.
What is your understanding then of rewilding, even if it is only 2,000 acres at the moment?
Well, it's helping nature to recover in a way that includes people in the equation. Our definition in the Bunloit Rewilding Project has people front and center in the equation as it were, guardians of the wilding land. And so in that way, we're contributing to the rural version of the Green New Deal. And this, I think, of course, is going to be terrifically important to communities going forward. I don't believe we're going to solve the climate crisis or biodiversity collapse without the full fighting engagement of local communities, especially in terrains like the Highlands of Scotland.
Now, obviously, the communities across the Highlands are very scattered and very disparate in many ways, but you talk about communities there. What has been the reaction? Because there does tend to be a negative reaction to those who come in and buy up the Highlands.
Oh, yes. And that's another reason why I think this multiple ownership model is so important. So we've spent a lot of effort, a lot of time, all of the first year, reaching out widely within the community, the expert organizations. And broadly, the response has been encouraging. We've enjoyed majority support. Of course, we meet opposition, and some of it is very vehement opposition. But on the whole, it's been encouraging. It's certainly enough of a mandate to continue with what we're trying to do. And with the second estate, Beldorney, where Highlands Rewilding will operate, I'm super encouraged by the reaction, the early reaction of the local community. So our idea here is to build a legacy forest, what we call a forest of hope, that will be a legacy for the Glasgow Climate Summit. And we'll do that on the Beldorney land. We'll plant 250,000 trees in the time ahead. And when I announced this or took this idea to the local community, I had immediately had 3 local landowners come to me and say, hey, can we join in? We're contiguous with your land. Why can't we do this as well? We know how important this natural capital carbon sequestration thing is going to be. And a local community organization called the Cabrac Trust is convening lots more, a good few more landowners up the Deveron Valley. So we have in prospect a community-led rewilding carbon sink project that, if we can pull it off, will really be inspiring for people, I hope.
Do you think this model is only applicable to the Scottish Highlands, or is it something that could now be replicated in vast tracts around the globe?
Well, I think, to be fair, it already is in lots of other countries. There is no country like the UK where so much land is owned by so few people. So, we're not in a good place to start. I think this kind of model is vitally important up here in Scotland, and perhaps arguably in the rest of the UK, because it plugs into the land reform agenda here in Scotland. It's completely nuts to have the vast majority of a huge country owned by relatively few people, many of whom are complete absentees.
What about your view on the banks and the other major corporates who've been quietly buying up land, rather like you have, as a way of offsetting carbon?
Yeah, I hope they're going to involve local communities much more than they have shown signs of doing so hitherto. And of course, inevitably, it's not going down well with the Scots in general. There's been a debate in the Scottish Parliament about the so-called Green Lairds who are doing this kind of thing. I'm plaintively arguing that I'm not a Green Laird, or at minimum, I'm a Green Laird light. But yeah, if I were a native Highland Scot, I'd be really fed up with that development.
Jeremy, you were way ahead of the what has happened now with solar panels. You created Solar Century. You were a pioneer in that area when most people were deeply skeptical, and it's been a financial benefit to you because you managed to sell the company last year. What is your prediction, therefore, now, given that you have this fantastic ability to sense the direction of travel? What is your expectation now about what you're doing will eventually lead, and how quickly?
Yeah, I'm super encouraged, Nick. I remember those days. You know, you probably saw me being accused of being a rootless dreamer, as one minister called me, on a debating platform. You may have chaired that, for all I remember, but it's very different now. Most everybody you talk to accepts that this is going to have to be the future, and that includes all the politicians of whatever political description. And different constituencies. The people that I find most touching in this are the estate agents. Until relatively recently, the big estate agents have been selling these tracts of land in Scotland based on, you know, how many tons of grouse you can blast out of the sky. And they're having to change their tune, and they're doing it willingly. To be fair to them, they're making a good fist of it. They're learning fast, and they're applying their sales techniques using words like natural capital.
Final thought, Jeremy, if you can. What's your overarching view about how the corporate sector, the political sector, politicians, people, the business leaders really understand and appreciate the enormity of the existential threat to the planet now? Has the message got through? John Kerry calls this like wartime. Do you believe that that's the way it's understood?
I think it's there's never been higher than that it is at the moment, the appreciation.
Is it high enough?
It's not high enough, and it's very frustrating. And, you know, the financial institutions, I honestly, I probably unwise to say this, but I find most of them seriously annoying, and they talk such a big game. But you try and get even the most basic natural capital business proposition past the credit committees in most of the banks, for example, and you can forget it. It isn't going to happen. Even now, without it's relying on family offices, high net worth individuals, pioneer investors, and yet, you know, what risk would you really be taking in doing this at this point in time? And what risk are you taking by doing nothing, having an excellent PR department, and not making material steps? But people know this. People like Mark Carney are working very hard to deconstruct it, and that's what we're going to try and do. Because if we can make this kind of activity investable, verifiably investable, it will make it easier for these dreadfully conservative financial institutions to come to the party.
So quickly, in 30 seconds, what is the way you would pitch to the skeptics, the laggards, the people who are dragging their anchor chains, the people with power who don't really want to engage? What do they have to get? What do they have to do? What do they have to be convinced by then?
Well, you know, they're convinced of the threat, so that's not the issue. It's just the ability to make money. And what I would say is, okay, even if we struggle with economic models involving natural capital, which we shouldn't if policymakers do their job, but even if we do, what about the rising price of the land? You're sitting on an asset that is completely bankable, very little chance that anything's going to happen other than the land price continuing to go up. So you've got that asset. Where is your risk? Why don't you come to this party?
Jeremy, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Jeremy Leggett there. Well, let's hear from more of our partners now and their commitments on climate.
The recent IPCC report made it clear that limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C before 2050 is in everyone's best interest. And it's going to take all of us rising to this challenge now to bend the arc on climate change. From smallholders and forest-dependent communities to the largest corporations. And while 1/5 of the world's largest companies have already committed to net zero goals, that's not enough. It's going to take more ambition and more rapidly scalable solutions for sequestering carbon. We need those today. At NCX, the Natural Capital Exchange, we're working to democratize access to forest carbon markets because we know that land-based carbon storage is needed to hit our goals, and forests offer a ready part of that solution. By working with rural communities, incentivizing changes in the management of forests and increasing forest cover, we have the potential to contribute 12 billion tons of CO2 storage per year, or 25% of the global mitigation needed by 2050 to hit our goal. going to take all of us and every innovation we can bring to bear. If we can get this right, if we can get the measurements right, if we can get the incentives right, we can create the immediate impact at scale in this critical decade when we need it most. Thank you.
At COP26, the International Copper Association will launch a new initiative called CORE, the cornerstone of rural electrification, which operates at the nexus of energy access and efficiency. The Sustainable Innovation Forum provides us with a platform to amplify our message and to connect with key stakeholders. See you there.
Imagine a future with zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. At SAP, we power the technology and innovation required to activate this bold vision into reality. We provide sustainable, intelligent enterprises with the solutions required to manage their green line to reduce their carbon footprint, to rethink business processes across the entire value chain, and to safeguard social responsibility across workforce, sourcing, and procurement. Join us in our commitment to chasing zero.
At E.ON, we believe in a decarbonized, sustainable energy future. We're committed to the Paris Agreement and to the protection of ecosystems. We have set ourselves ambitious targets and we pursue them together with our partners and customers. At COP26, we believe we must see the decisive action from all parties involved.
All financial institutions have an opportunity to make a positive difference in this fight. And at BMO, we're aiming higher. Our ambition is clear: to be our clients' lead partner in the transition to a net zero world.
As a global leader for commercial vehicle telematics, the biggest impact that we can make is to help decarbonize the world's transportation sector. Our mission is to transform the way the world moves and transports goods and people by helping organizations accelerate their sustainable fleet efforts. The transport sector relies heavily on fuels and energy products to keep our modern economy running. We deliver telematics responsibly and help other organizations reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and transition to low-carbon transport and vehicle electrification. Geotab's corporate sustainability goals are aligned with the Paris Agreement. We are committed to science-based targets, reducing our Scope 1 and 2 emissions 50% by 2030, and we're taking a hard line to achieving net zero for all 3 scopes of emissions by 2040. It's a privilege to be part of the Sustainability Innovation Forum, to connect, learn, inspire action in transition to net zero global economy. This is a decisive moment to define our future. Let's reimagine this together.
A very critical pointer to the even greater urgency of tackling the climate emergency comes from ice at the north and south of our planet. Latest data is showing the melt of ice is far faster than any models have predicted, and this is putting even greater pressure on our planet. Water levels are rising because ice is melting. There's far less ice to reflect the sun's heat from our planet. This threatens everything that is low-lying, including many of our cities around the globe. Their threat now is existential. That's what they're facing. And that's recognized by the Arctic Angels, a youth-led intergenerational action network.
Now, I am not an explorer. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm actually just a survivor. And these photographs that I'm showing you here are dangerous. They are the ice melt of the South and North Poles. And ladies and gentlemen, we need to listen to what these places are telling us. And if we don't, we will end up with our own survival situation here on planet Earth.
It was 2009, and at the age of 22, my small initiatives around Earth Hour and Earth Day to raise awareness about climate change in India somehow caught the eye of polar explorer and leader Robert Swan OBE. His belief and trust in me gave me the motivation to join an expedition to the most remotest part of Earth, Antarctica, an experience that has since motivated me to devote my life to working towards combating climate change. My name is Divya Navle, and this is the story of the journey that changed my life. With some strong corporate funding, I was finally able to make it to the 2041 Foundation's International Antarctic Expedition in November of 2009. On the expedition, I saw firsthand how climate change and human action is changing the last pristine parts of Earth, and grew to understand the magnitude of global impact the loss of ice would have on our future generations. Since my return, I have helped set up local environmental and specifically clean energy initiatives, and worked on global scale operations to track and reduce emissions of multinational companies by understanding carbon footprint across the world. I also worked directly with the 2041 Foundation to set up solar-powered libraries for kids in forests of central India and the remotest parts of the Himalayas. I am now proud to have become a part of the Global Choices Arctic Angels Network, where we mentor and collaborate with young leaders from around the world to move the ice crisis to the top of policy agenda. This year, 2 more of the world's most talented, creative, and curious young leaders have the opportunity to go to Antarctica, where they can have the same life-changing experience that I had. A truly sustainable world needs investment in its future leaders. Each place on our expedition costs $16,250. We hope there are corporations or individuals attending here today who share the vision to empower young leaders like the opportunity I was given a decade ago. Sponsoring a place, either fully or in part, will enable these future leaders to experience Antarctica's wondrous hidden beauty, to see the reality of climate change, and come back motivated to make the changes that we need to see today. Thank you, and remember, we can't plant ice.
So there you have a sense of the way the Arctic Angels have been operating, particularly down in Antarctica, but their concern is about the Arctic and Antarctica. So I'm joined by 4 of the Arctic Angels, one of whom has been to both Antarctica and the Arctic. Divya Navale, welcome Divya, you're in Hyderabad in India, a lot warmer than the Arctic. We also have Alessandro Pederzoli, who is joining us from Milan. We have Eve Acham, who's joining us from Kampala in Uganda, and Tessata, who's lived in Chicago, but at the moment is in Colorado. Welcome to you all. Divya, we saw you on that film briefly, but quickly, what is so important about the Arctic and Antarctica to you?
The most important thing to me, especially about these 2 ecosystems, are that they are the most pristine places on the planet left. They're mostly untouched, and when you just look at how they have preserved in a way that it's like time stands still. I've had the opportunity to be to Antarctica twice, and I think what moved me more than anything is the silence and just the kind of clear skies. that I rarely get to see back home in India because of
My goodness, but you've been there twice.
Yes.
Do you realize how lucky you are? It is so difficult to get there. But very quickly, were you struck by the way ice is disappearing?
It is. And the reason why I can say that is because the two times that I went to Antarctica was 8 years apart. I was just, I think, in a place where I couldn't understand why the ice was not as thick. It was in the similar time of the year. We go there in the austral summer, and what happens is that you see that like ice is really melting, and you have more and more like these pieces of ice breaking off from the main continent and just floating away. And I think it's heartbreaking to think that this is something that we are causing from our action.
And the impact as well in our cities, in our lowlands, and the impact of that water melting. But look, Divya, just stand by one moment because I'd like to introduce everyone else. Let's go to Kampala in Uganda to Eve, because I'd like to just hear 30 seconds from each of you, a kind of bio, CV of what your credentials are, if you like, in the sustainability world. Eve, what do you do in Uganda and Africa?
Thank you so much. My name is Evelyn Acham. I'm a climate justice activist from Uganda. I'm a member of Fridays for Future. I'm an Arctic Angel and the national coordinator for the Rise Up movement.
Does it seem a bit strange? I mean, in Kampala, I've been there during a massively heavy rainstorm, but does it feel sometimes strange for you down in the middle of Africa to be talking about and worrying about the Arctic and the Antarctica?
Yeah, it's kind of strange because so many people cannot connect the dots. They cannot understand why I'm actually fighting for the protection of the ice, because they have never seen ice. I mean, most of them are only seeing this on TV, and they are wondering why I'm advocating for the protection of the ice. But I've been able to explain this to different people in my circles, and a few people are getting to understand this. And I believe if more people join the fight for the protection of the Arctic, more people will understand, and they will understand that what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. It actually affects us, even in Uganda and Africa.
That's right. And obviously you've been involved in protests, Fridays for Future, and also you're a green ambassador for climate in Africa. Let me move on to Milan, to Alessandra. Alessandra, what's your background? Even though you haven't been lucky enough to go to Arctic or Antarctica, what's your background in the environment and sustainability?
Last year, I've done a master's degree in sustainable development and Arctic studies. And I'm now involved as an intern in the National Council of Italy as a researcher. And I'm doing a research to study the impacts of climate change for the coastal communities. So even for the coastal communities that lives all around the world, the polar regions and the polar crises are fundamental for the sea level rise. And often the polar ice crisis is marginalized from the global thinking, even if it has consequences on climate security, weather events, and also ocean currents. So we all live the Arctic degradation because in the Earth is all interconnected, and also we are all interconnected, and our actions are putting the ice on the edge of extinction.
All right, well, let me go to Tess now in Boulder, Colorado, which of course is up in the mountains of Colorado, and you come from one of the windiest cities on Earth in Chicago. What's your own background in this issue, in this area of environment and sustainability? What's driving you where you're studying at the moment?
So I'm a political science major at CU Boulder, and I've taken many classes on the environment and trying to learn how to solve this climate issue. And I'm an activist for environmental rights. I've protested for this, especially on Fridays. And yes, I have also focused on trying to get restaurants in my area to reduce their plastic use. So I've been trying to get them to replace their plastic straws with hay straws, which is a way better option for.
And did you have any success?
Yes, actually, a few restaurants we did switch from the straws more specifically, but some also did cups. They, instead of plastic cups, they did biodegradable, like plant-based cups.
So you're managing to change thinking and mindsets a bit.
Yes.
Okay, well, Divya, we've spoken to you already, but just give us a little more background on the kind of work you've been doing both in India and, of course, in university in the US.
Sure. So I'm an engineer from India, but then I did a master's in public policy because I was more inspired to work in the environment space after my first visit to the Antarctic continent. And I've since been a global ambassador for Climate Force Antarctica with the 2041 Foundation. I was also an Arctic Youth Fellow and had been to the Arctic Circle Assembly. So I have engaged with various policymakers and other stakeholders in the polar space. And I'm also an Arctic Angel for Global Choices.
All right, well, look, what I'd like to hear from each of you, at the end of September, there was a meeting, pre-COP meeting under the Italian presidency back in Milan, where you are at the moment, Alessandro, except you weren't there during that meeting. What I'd like to do is hear from you. I think, Eve, you've heard what the feeling was among your contemporaries, your age group, your next gen, about what they heard. Greta Thunberg was there, what they heard and what they didn't hear and what their feelings were. Try and summarize for us, could you?
I personally did not attend the pre-COP, but I was following through, and I had a chance to talk to different people, a few people that attended the pre-COP, and the feedback was not good. So many people were actually complaining about the objectives and targets not being met. Looks like so many people were actually left out, and so many voices were left out. People did not actually get, they did not get what they expected to get from the leaders. So they did not really get the objectives being fulfilled.
And what does that signal to you about what might happen or not happen in COP26 in Glasgow, Eve?
This is scary because COP26 is our, it looks like our last chance to act. It looks like the last opportunity we are giving to the leaders to act on the climate crisis. Yeah, but with the fact that the pre-COP was not really successful. Well, it was successful to the people, to the viewers, but according to what we expected as activists, as the youth, we did not really see much. So we are so much worried about COP, and we continue to talk to remind the leaders that we need to see action. We need to see you take action and stop making empty promises. We need to see more inclusion at COP, because it's already clear that so many youth are being left out. We only have about 4 weeks to the COP, but so many youth, especially from the global south, are being left out because there's a vaccine inequity, less funding for the people, and very, very, very hard visa rules and restrictions. So you find that so many rules, so many youth that are capable to speak up, so many youth that can share their stories are being left out. And without the people.
Yeah, let me pick up with the other three as well. What do you think, Tess? What's your view about, certainly from North America, what's your view about whether your voice, whether the voice of the next generation, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y, is really being listened to and taken care of, and likely to be taken care of and listened to in COP26?
So I was not there, but I think especially in the US, it's not a very known thing. And I think that that's a big thing that needs to start happening, is that youth leaders
need to be... People don't know about COP26?
No.
Even though the president, your president, Joseph Biden, and John Kerry are saying that this is about saving the planet.
I can tell you that if I asked anybody that I know, I'm sure that they wouldn't know about this. And I think that that's the most concerning thing to me, is that more people, I feel like it needs to be more like everybody needs to know what this is. And I feel like it's only some specific people know what it is. And if you're very involved in the climate action, you know what this is, but you don't if you are just a normal person. So I think that needs to get more awareness on what it is in order for action to be able to actually happen. And
what kind of,
like Alessandra.
excuse me, intervening. Listening to what Eve said and the disappointment, what kind of expectations do you have, or do you have fears that actually your expectations won't be met in any way in Glasgow?
I think just my fear or my expectation is that it's become more known and that everybody can say, oh yeah, I do know what this is, and everybody can work together to know what this is, and we can try to make a change. But I think a big fear is that it's not going to gain as much popularity, and I think that's the biggest issue right now, especially at least where I am.
Do you think business leaders and politicians feel under pressure or not?
Yes.
Good.
But
okay.
not as much as they should, I don't think.
All right, good. Alessandra, what's your view? Same kind of questions to you about your expectations in Glasgow and whether you expect them to be delivered with the radical kind of solutions which are so desperately needed to save our planet.
I want to be positive about this, and I expect that the COP26 will be brave and courageous because the issues are technical and complex to solve, but they cannot be allowed to become obstacles or excuses from achieving the overall goals. So we are the first generation that feels the effects of climate change. And at the same time, we are the only and last one who can do something about this. So an intergenerational constructive dialogue is fundamental to end up with a correct strategy for a better future. And in this sense, the young generation must be heard. So also the protest that took place in Milan during the Youth for Climate and also pre-COP was an example of the youth that are screaming to the policymakers that we are ready and we have the knowledge to be involved in all the decision-making process.
Do you think your voice is listened to? Do you think it's heard by the political leaders and the corporate leaders who will be gathered in Glasgow?
I hope so.
Yeah, that's not the same as, do you think it is being heard?
I think that the policymakers at this point have to listen to the young generation. Otherwise, we cannot be so ambitious and we cannot take really concrete actions to tackle the effects of climate change. This is our last chance.
You really put it like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Divya, now look, you've had the privilege and the luck to be not just once, but twice in the Antarctic and the Arctic. But when you see what you've seen, particularly the rate of ice melt and the impact it's having now on water levels and the potential impact on our cities, on our low-lying farming areas and so on, are you astonished, staggered, frightened that actually the scale is simply not being understood?
It's absolutely not being understood. I really feel that a lot of these leaders are just sitting in conference rooms most of the time and just talking about what's really important to them. They're not really clear on what's important to young people and what's really happening in the real world out there.
There are some corporate leaders and some big companies who are making massive changes. Surely you'd understand that.
I do, and I hope that they are able to raise their voice and bring everybody together. So I'm actually hopeful that the few people and the leaders that are there with an intention to make a change are able to do so.
All of you, what do you think the business leaders particularly need to do? And remember, we're not just talking about 1,000 big corporations around the world. We're talking about tens of millions of small and medium-sized enterprises. Those who are the heart, the engine room of our economies. Do you think that most of them get the enormity of what's happening and the speed at which things have to be done, not by 2050, but more like 2030? Eve, what's your view on that quickly?
From what I see, I don't really think business leaders are taking this seriously, because maybe a few of them are, because what I see is that they are putting the profits, they're putting their money above the people's lives and the planet. Yeah, I haven't really seen enough. other activists haven't really seen enough from the business leaders, and we expect them to understand what is going on and to join. To listen to the science and listen to the activists, what the activists are saying, and to also understand that even in a green economy, they can actually make the money, that they want. And another world is actually possible, another world where there's a transition from fossil fuels, from investing in coal and oil. Another world is possible where they can still make money and be very rich. So
yeah, that's central to what the British Academy has done out on the future of the corporation, saying you can still make money by solving the world's problems, not by creating more. Let me just check in with Tess. What's your view of whether the corporate sector, particularly all sizes of businesses, millions, tens of millions around the world, really understand the existential threat?
I think they understand, and I think that they hear the youth, but I don't think that they're actually taking action to do it. So I think that's the bigger issue, is everybody is starting to know that this is an issue and that they do need to make a change. I just don't know if the change is happening yet. And it just became an issue, I think, to people's awareness, at least in the US, because of these signs of climate change. We've had terrible hurricanes, crazy wildfires. So I think it's just kind of starting to catch people's attention, but change is not yet really happening.
Alessandra, what is going to be done to make sure people understand the enormity of the COP26 expectations and the dangers of not delivering what is needed in Glasgow?
I think that we need to rethink and reshape the way we used to work together in a more inclusive and collaborative way. If we cannot hear all voices, we cannot build the world of tomorrow. So I really hope that this COP in Glasgow will listen to the urgent needs of our Earth.
Well, look, thank you all four of you. And Divya, I think there's a possibility we might see you in Glasgow, if you're lucky enough to be able to find somewhere to stay, if you're lucky enough to be able to get through quarantine and all that. We look forward to seeing you. And if anyone else makes it, and I think, Eve, you're hoping to get access to a particular member country, we'd love to see you as well. But we're here at the Sustainable Innovation Forum to try and put and to make sure everything you have said goes on the agenda, which is why we're talking to you, representing the next generation who've got to live with the enormity of whatever is done or not done in Glasgow. So thank you all very much indeed. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you again in person at some time in the future. And others in the Arctic Angels will be joining us in person at the Sustainable Innovation Forum in Glasgow, monitoring and pressing on those vital points. Now let's hear from more of our partners.
Climate change and its effects are accelerating, threatening our existence and that of every other living thing on this planet. We can wait no longer to stop irreversible damage. We need to make long-term changes to the way we live. As an international law firm, we have an important role to play. Every day, we advise companies, funders, and governments around the world. We help those companies and organisations set and deliver climate change and sustainability strategies. We can explain the direct impact that climate change may have on their business and communities. We can create legal standards and frameworks that accelerate sustainable innovation. And we can transfer this best practice through our international network to share the very best ideas far and wide. But we must live by that example too. So we've set ambitious targets for our own business to achieve net zero by 2030, to change the way in which we do business from how we power our offices to cutting back on travel. As a law firm, our role as advisors and advocates has never been so important. But as a group of 5,000 people in 26 countries, we also have no alternative but to embrace change, to secure our future. To succeed, we also need to work together and forge new partnerships, which is why we're excited to be an industry partner at Climate Action's Sustainable Innovation Forum in Glasgow from the 8th to the 10th of November.
Emerson is deeply committed to decarbonization. I can't wait to join the Sustainable Innovation Forum and share the ways we are working with our customers and partners to accelerate sustainability. See you in Glasgow.
The time is now. Each of us must take action, and we can't do it alone. Positive climate impact depends upon our ability to work within our organizations, across our supply chains, and by partnering with others who push us forward. International Paper is partnering with organizations to advance nature-based solutions in order to accelerate our path to a low-carbon economy. We invite you to join us.
In a changing world, the ocean seems constant, an ever-present body filled with wonder and wide open to discovery. The ocean is a primary driver of our climate. As our climate changes, so too will the ocean. New solutions to address climate and human health depend on our understanding of this vast ecosystem. Schmidt Ocean Institute works to catalyze the discoveries needed to ensure the health of our planet through scientific research and intelligent observation, technological advancement, open sharing of information, and public engagement. Innovation and technology make new solutions possible. Schmidt Marine Technology Partners amplifies this through a venture philanthropy model to support the development of new ocean technologies for sustainable innovation. Join Schmidt Ocean Institute and Schmidt Marine Technology Partners at COP26 and the Sustainable Innovation Forum to look to the ocean for solutions and boldly explore our unknown depths together.
Here at Connected Curb, we hope to make a major contribution to the COP26 goal of securing global net zero by the middle of the century. Road transportation is a significant contributor to global emissions of greenhouse gases, and particulate pollution is increasingly recognised as causing chronic health problems. It's our mission to change this. We're pledging to educate every community in the UK about the benefits of electric vehicles. It's critical that we win the hearts and minds of all transport users in order to change habits and make mass EV uptake a reality, which is why being at the Sustainable Innovation Forum is so critical. For many in society, zero-emissions transport remains an unattractive option. But now with the cost of EVs falling and their performance rising, the main reason for this is a lack of supporting EV charging infrastructure. And that's where we come in. We provide the world's most sustainable, long-life charging infrastructure for everyone in society who can't charge their vehicles at home, regardless of where they live or their income. To accelerate the switch of EVs, it's essential that we make EV charge points affordable, sustainable, and accessible to all.
So what can you expect at the Sustainable Innovation Forum in Glasgow? How are things going to be configured? What will be the focus? What will be the aim? Well, I'm joined by two of my colleagues, fellow moderators, Maithri Sitharaman and Mark Barton, who will be seeing us through on several of the different stages, because we have different stages and different themes. And that's important to understand because there's going to be a focus on different areas, 4 critical themes over the days. I'm going to be involved in the global action stage. The aim there is really to bring together the role of public sector, private sector, see how they can come together, convening the largest multi-stakeholder gathering really to air the kind of issues that are on people's minds, on the leaders' minds, not least and specifically what still needs to be done as the negotiations are going on elsewhere. And what the aim will be is on the world stage is really to underscore that this is about transformation, the urgency of what is needed. It showcases the changes that are being made already, but the enormous amount of work that still has to be done, the agreements that have to be put in place, the change of mindset mindset and culture and where things are going on the global low carbon economy. Well, let's now join with Maithri and Mark to tell us what is going to be happening in their areas. Because Mark, you've been involved recently in the Future Summit on finance, and that was at the end of September. Where are you taking things on your stage?
Yeah, the key, Nick, is to discover where we're going to direct capital. How do we direct capital towards this green, towards this inclusive recovery? And not only that, but redirecting fiscal policy to a resilient and sustainable recovery. So we're going to be asking that crucial question, how do we fund climate action? A really important question, and looking at the solutions such as investment, ESG finance, natural capital, and data-driven economy. And Nick, we had something really encouraging take place at the UNGA, the General Assembly at the UN last month. And President Biden pledged, as you probably know, almost $12 billion. He doubled the contributions to developing countries to tackle climate change, the effects of climate change, to mitigate climate change. And this is important because it sets in place and it puts pressure on the likes of the UK, Canada, Australia, and Japan and Italy to up their contributions. They need to up their contributions by between $2 to $4 billion. If we can nail this, maybe we can make inroads on carbon markets and on transparency, because as we all know, the poorer nations are going to be affected hugely by climate change, and they don't have the money to mitigate the impact. So we're going to have these groups of countries who are going to be hoping that we get fulfilled promises from the likes of the UK, like I said, Japan, Australia, and then that will be a prerequisite for a negotiated agreement in Glasgow. But finance, as we know, it's a huge complex, but such an integral part of this solution to a net zero economy by 2050.
So, Mark, that's the finance stage. What about the reimagine stage? Reimagine, what's all that about?
Yeah, reimagine. I love the name, Nick. It sort of says what it is on the tin. Reimagine. How can we come up with alternative, innovative approaches to tackle climate change? So we're going to be asking some key questions. How do we think differently about the environmental challenge on a global scale? How can we rethink our relationship with nature, Nick? And this is vital. Nature is so important, obviously, but sometimes we forget that by having strong and healthy ecosystems, that will help us in itself fight climate change, help us to adapt to climate impacts as well. As you know, we've had this 1 degree increase in temperatures since pre-industrial levels, and that's hugely damaging to the planet's ecosystems. Biodiversity is being impacted, Nick, and you look at biome systems from regions, freshwater, oceans, grasslands, savannas, forests, food, they're all being impacted. We need to re-examine the way that we interact with our environment and we interact with nature. And we've got some wonderful panels, Nick, on nature-based solutions, zero carbon buildings, conscientious consumers, and marine conservatism. So it's going to be brilliant, this reimagine stage, on top of the finance stage as well.
And nature has a much bigger profile now, particularly after the Dasgupta report, where he said very clearly, nature is not factored into business, anything like enough.
Yes, very, very true. And you look at the stats, you know, that take, make, dispose attitude that we have towards production and consumption. This stat is mind-blowing, Nick. In 2019, over 92 billion tons of materials were extracted and processed. That contributes to about half of CO2 emissions. We had a great quote from Nigel Topping, who's the UNFCCC's high-level climate action champion. He says, supply chain decarbonization will be a game changer for the impact of corporate climate action. Addressing scope 3 emissions is fundamental for companies to realize credible climate change commitments. We'll be talking, Nick, about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. There's so much to discuss. It's absolutely enthralling.
And a quick personal reflection after you chaired the Sustainable Investment Forum for North America at the end of September. Is enough moving fast enough?
the mood music's good, the words are good, there's a unity, there's a real sense of urgency, Nick, from the financial community, from us responsible investors to kick into gear. So that's important. We need to see more action. We need to see more action from governments. We're seeing collaboration. We're seeing these wonderful initiatives as well, which is so important. But we need to see more action from governments. We need to see the financial sector, though, lead the way. That's really, really important. Finance needs to take this central role in the energy transition. I love this quote, Nick: strategy is easy, but execution is hard. We need better public policy, smart incentives, a global regulatory framework. But what we're seeing, Nick, is wonderful progress in green finance. Expect record issuance of green bonds and loans this year. We need asset owners to put pressure and to engage with companies as well. And I love this quote from one of the attendees, Nick: technology must be an accelerator and not a brake. And that made me think about electric vehicles, which was a big focus of the Sustainable Investment Forum North America. We need 700 million charging points by 2050. EVs are a huge solution, but we need the technology in place, charging points, 700 million, to enable that wonderful solution. But definitely the soundings out of the financial community are very positive as we approach COP26.
All right, so Mark, we understand what the finance stage is about. We understand what reimagining is about. Let's move on to Maithri. Maithri, you're going to be overseeing the transition stage, something you've been doing at other sessions during the recent months. What does transitions mean, and where can you take the debate?
Well, exactly what Mark was just talking about. What the heck do we do about transitioning the industries that are really contributing to the problem in itself? And it's been exciting since the start of this year. We've been talking about how mobility, and as Mark brought up, the EV charging points specifically, were a big topic of discussion when we did the Transport Transition Summit. We were talking about the infrastructure required, and the only thing that seemed to be stopping the growth of that EV infrastructure was really government support. The financiers are behind it, the companies that are innovating it are behind it, and again, it really comes down to regulation. So through the Transition Summit, we're going to be talking about not just mobility, but we'll be talking about energy in itself. We'll be talking about heavy industries, the big contributor for climate issues. We've got shipping, which was a big focus for us as well through the year. We've got issues that come out from aviation. All of it is not just a conversation about what they're doing, but truly what kind of business plans they're putting in place to make the transition a reality beyond the rhetoric that Mark was mentioning, and actually make it a reality in the next 5 years, not even waiting till 2030. So the transition stage will focus, I'm hoping, on real solutions, real business plans that can allow financiers to be extremely comfortable in the money that they're putting into these industries, into the companies that are innovating, and say, okay, if we can believe in these companies, governments have to believe in these companies and back us up with the regulations we require, with the reform we require, and with the infrastructure we require. Nick?
And finally, a thought on the fact that this is a sustainable innovation forum. The aim is to move towards net zero, not by 2050, but much, much sooner. How much do you think you're going to be able to push them down that path to, if you like, find greater agreement that maybe is happening inside the halls themselves?
I think bringing these people together is the first point of contact in terms of having these conversations in themselves is critical. So we have an amazing lineup of both policymakers and CEOs who will be sitting at the table together, honestly speaking to each other. And I love honesty on a stage. I will strongly be encouraging that. But I think the question really comes down to if promises are being made of, say, for example, coal-fired power plants will no longer be built, how strong are those promises? That's a question to be asked by CEOs who are transitioning their money towards green energy, saying, okay, we no longer have to build these coal power plants, we have to transition them. How do we do it? If it is an aviation CEO sitting there, he wants to be able to ask honest questions, especially regarding, with COVID in the frame. How do we do it at this point when we're already suffering? So hopefully the Transition Summit and this transition stage in itself will give an honest platform for having an honest dialogue that allows every single stakeholder in that room to be able to say, we walked out of here with something solid, something actionable, and something that we can accomplish way before 2050.
Honesty, frankness, something I think all of us as moderators will be pushing for and questioning and challenging if we smell that we're not getting the full answers. Maithri and Mark, thank you so much. And just a reminder to all of you, you can now register, of course, at www.cop26.uk to engage with all our platforms, those 4 stages that we've got. Thanks to both of you. We'll see each other in Glasgow in the beginning of November, let's put it like that, rather than in a specific number of days. And we'll look forward as well to meeting our partners joining us at the Sustainable Innovation Forum in Glasgow at COP26.
Every single move, every step, and every path, every goal, and every click, every word, every screw, and every turn, every single choice defines our common future, a future for generations to come. Within the Fissman family, and together with each and every one of our partners, we have the privilege to shape this future. Together, we set the pace. Now every turn means gaining traction. Every screw becomes a lasting connection. Every click means to share. And every word says we care. In order to live up to these goals, every path means taking action. And every step walked together is a step in the right direction. Because every single move has the power to unite. Together, we co-create a climate for life.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Spellacy, and I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Patch, an API-first marketplace for carbon removal. We partner with a wide variety of technology companies to launch automated sustainability programs. We're incredibly excited to be joining you all in Glasgow this year at the Sustainable Innovation Forum. If you'd like to see me speak, I'll be on the Climate Warriors panel on Wednesday, November 10th, discussing how we can engage with consumers to make them become climate activists. If you'd like to talk more about how Patch can partner with your organization to launch some sort of climate positive or carbon negative product or service, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm so excited to meet with you all.
Thanks for joining us for this launch event for the Sustainable Innovation Forum. We hope it really has been an exciting insight into what you can expect and how you can engage with us in Glasgow, either virtually or in person. This really is a race against time. We must set net zero pathways to ensure we align with a maximum of a 1.5 degrees centigrade future. Ambition must be turned into action. Promises must become plans. Visions must become reality. Register now at www.cop26.uk to be part of the solution. See you there in Glasgow from the 8th of November.